everyone, my name is Amber and this is my November wrap-up. I read 13 books in November, which was more than I was expecting, so I'm pretty happy with that. November was a very busy month for me, so the fact that I got to 13 books was incredible. I actually only have one of them with me physically because the others I either read on my Kindle or on Audible, or I got them from the library and then I returned them. So I don't have many physical copies to show you, I'm sorry. We might as well get into the books. The first one that I read was Silka's Journey, which came out in 2019. It's historical adult fiction, kind of non-fiction as well because it's based on a true story. And it's about a woman called Silka who was in Auschwitz, and it's about her story there and also what she went through afterwards in the Russian, I think, are they gulags? This is a companion novel to The Tattooist of Auschwitz, and I really enjoyed that book. This one was a bit more kind of bland. It felt like the author took a lot more liberties with this story and it didn't feel so true to life. So I didn't love it, but I did give it 3 stars. It was enjoyable. The next book I read was one that was surprising because I wasn't expecting to love it so much, and that was The Gracier. This is YA dystopian. It came out in October. It's set in a dystopian society where women are very oppressed. All the women, when they turn 16, have to go on their Gracier, which means that they leave the township and go off into the woods and have to look after themselves. And it's basically a way to break them and turn them against one another so they can't rise up against the men. I thought it was a very, very good book. It was gripping, it was very topical, and I thought that it was quite scary at some points because you could see some of, I don't know, the themes and things that happened in real life in our current societies. I thought it was very, very well done. A couple of things that I didn't like, which is why I only gave 4 stars instead of 5, were the romance, because it was kind of, it wasn't overbearing, but it felt very unnecessary. And the reason I felt it was very unnecessary was because I didn't like the thing that happened right at the end, which I'm not going to go into because it would be a spoiler, but there was no need for that, so there was also no need for several other things as well. So if you've read the book, you'll know what I'm talking about. I just really didn't like the way the book ended, and I don't know if there's going to be maybe a companion story and that's why the author ended the book this way, but I wasn't a huge fan of that. But the rest of the story was absolutely incredible. Really, really enjoyed it, so I gave it 4 stars. I then read an adult mystery, which was Someone We Know by Shari Lapina. This book is her newest one. I've read all of her other books prior to this and I've really enjoyed them all. This one was a little bit different. It was more of a low-key neighbourhood mystery rather than a high intense psychological thriller. I did enjoy it, but I didn't love it. I only gave it 3 stars. It's basically set in a neighbourhood where this one young boy, I think he's 15 maybe, he goes around and goes into people's houses and looks on their computers, which is obviously illegal, but also he's only 15, he wasn't stealing anything. Anyway, so while that is going on, a dead body is also found. One of the neighbours is killed, and so these 2 storylines kind of weave together, and it's very interesting. I kind of liked the small town neighbourhood drama that was going on, but I did figure out the ending and it just wasn't as thrilling as I was hoping it would be. I didn't realise it was going to be more of a low-key mystery, and because that is what I was expecting, I was a bit disappointed. That's not to say this book is bad, it's just it wasn't what I was looking for at the time, so I gave this one 3 stars. The Vanishing STAIR by Maureen Johnson. This is the sequel to Truly Devious, so I won't talk about this one too much. I will just say that this is a very middle filler book and it's not the best. I gave it 3 stars. I gave Truly Devious 4 stars in case, you know, you want some comparison. The series is set in an old boarding school for posh people, basically, and the school brings people in if they're very talented in certain fields. Stevie, the main character, for example, is really interested in true crime, and she wants to look into something that happened at the school when it was first founded. The founder's family were abducted and perhaps killed, and Stevie wants to solve this mystery and figure out what happened. The premise is very, very interesting. The way that Maureen Johnson kind of unfolded things in The Vanishing STAIR was not so great. The first book was very intriguing and you were just kind of getting to know all the characters. It was really, really well put together. But The Vanishing STAIR, I feel like, was a massive filler book and there was really no need for it to be there. I feel like half of it could have been in Truly Devious and half of it could have been in the next book in the series, which is coming out in January, which I am on the blog tour for, by the way, so I'm looking forward to reading that and seeing what it's like. I was just a bit disappointed by The Vanishing STAIR because I was expecting to find out more, and while we did find out some stuff about the mystery, it also left a lot of things open and it didn't really dive as deep as it could have. The next book I read was Thunderhead by Neil Shusterman, which is the second book in his Arc of a Scythe series trilogy, and let me tell you, this was not a filler book at all. I love this. I gave it 4 stars and I was considering giving it 5, but I decided I'm going to wait to see what the toll is like before I give this one 5 stars. I know, like, you should really rate books individually rather than where they stand in a series. I think 4 stars is where I'm at right now. If it doesn't feel like a 5-star read now after 2 weeks of having read it, it's likely not going to later. But anyway, so the Arc of the Scythe, it's a trilogy. The final book just came out in November, which is why I was so eager to read Thunderhead. I recapped it for Recaptains and I had an amazing time with it. It's such a good book. So in this world of the Scythe, there are these people who let me start again. So humanity has conquered death and it has created this AI, all-knowing artificial intelligence. It looks after humans and helps them, you know, conquer death and stay living. They're basically immortal. But because of this, the population is growing and growing, and so there are these people who are employed, kind of, they're not really employed, they're promoted to the position of scythes, who are basically Grim Reapers. They go around and cull the population. Now that sounds really interesting by itself, but what makes this book really interesting, or the series really interesting, is that the conflict between the New Order scythes and the old school scythes is really intense and really interesting. So the new guys kind of want to break away from the old laws and kind of do their own thing when it comes to killing people, whereas the old sides are like, no, we need order, we need to control the population properly and stick to our rules. And I just think it's an amazing series. I am loving it so far. I've actually just started the toll today and I'm about 60 to 70 pages in, I think, and I'm really enjoying it. So I would highly recommend this series if you haven't picked it up already. I know it's already really popular, but I'm thinking about doing a series review on it once I finish the toll, because I could probably talk about this series for hours. The next book I read was Love Boat Taipei. This one is a YA debut. It's YA contemporary and it comes out in January of 2020. I didn't really enjoy it. There's not really much I have to say on it. I gave it 2 stars. It was kind of boring. The characters were all over the place. There were too many and I don't feel like the writing was as kind of tight-knit as it could have been. It sounds really silly to say, but you can tell that the author is a debut author and she hasn't really mastered how to properly craft a tight story yet. So I think it was meant to feel a bit chaotic because it's been likened to Crazy Rich Asians, and those books are kind of all over the place as well, but in a more not subdued manner. They're meant to be all over the place, whereas this felt as though the author just jumped from one thing to another and didn't really know what she was doing. So I gave that one 2 stars, moving swiftly on to another 2-star book, and that is The Light at the Bottom of the World. This one is post-apocalyptic dystopian fiction, YA again. It's set in the UK, which is mostly underwater, and the main character's father has been arrested prior to the novel starting, and the main character has to take part in the London Marathon, which is now underwater and in like pod racing cars, in order to free her father. So things happen, things don't really go as planned, and she goes on the run. And I thought this book was so boring. I gave it 2 stars as well. Like I said, it was just so dull. It had such potential with the world building because I thought it sounded really interesting, but the author didn't really take advantage of it. It wasn't as intricately woven as I was hoping it would be. It was just kind of going from one point to another and nothing was really revealed. Things were very obvious. It just was not a book for me. I'm really quite disappointed by this one. To talk a bit more positively, I then gave a book 4 stars, and that was Only Mostly Devastated, which is another YA debut which is coming out in March of 2020. I might do a full review on this one because I really enjoyed it. It's a YA contemporary about a boy who is gay, and he has a summer romance prior to this book starting. The main character's auntie is also quite sick, so his family go to live with the auntie. This means that the main character has to start a new school, and lo and behold, the boy that he was in a summer romance with also goes to this school. So the main character shows up and is like, hey, what's going on with us? We can like be in a relationship now. And the summer romance guy is basically Danny Zuko from Greece and pretends like not to know him. And it's because he's not out as gay or bi, so he's worried that the main character is going to out him and it's all going to be absolutely awful. I really enjoyed this book. I got really into it. I loved all of the characterization, the cancer plotline also like really got to me. They always make me emotional, but this one for some reason I was just really connected to the aunts and also to the main character who was going through all of the grief and loss. I thought it was a really good book. I would highly recommend checking it out when it comes out next year. And now I actually have a physical book to show you, and that is The Sky Weaver by Kristen Cicerelli. This is the third book in her YA-ish fantasy series. The first one is about dragons. This one is about pirates and gods and goddesses. I don't really want to say too much about it and spoil things, but it's a very good book. It's got a female romance, and I gave it 4 stars. It's really very good, and I love the mythology. Kristen Cicerelli always weaves in her mythology with like in between chapters, so you have one chapter and then, because the whole kind of premise of this series, or the whole like base of this series is stories, so she includes those stories in the book, and they're always so great and atmospheric and just really well written. I'm so sad that this trilogy is over and she's not writing anymore in this world, because I think it has such potential to properly expand upon it. I'm very glad that I read it, and I haven't read the second book in this companion series. They don't follow on from each other directly. They're about characters within the same series, within the same world. I think you can read this third book, The Sky Weaver, without having read the previous 2. You won't get as much out of it. I think if I hadn't read The Last Namsara, I would be a bit confused about what was going on with the dragons and stories and Asher, but I didn't read The Caged Queen, and I don't feel like I missed out on much, so I'm going to go back and read The Caged Queen, and then I will let you know if you will or won't miss out. I then read an adult science fiction, which was Emily Eternal. I gave this one 2.5 stars. I didn't love it. This one is about an AI called Emily, who was a product of a few scientists who were at college, and in this world where Emily is, she's on planet Earth and the sun is dying out, so Emily has to, or wants to, try to find a way to save the human race, and people also want to use Emily to try to find a way to save the human race. And the whole premise of it was incredible. I love the idea of the sun dying out and humans trying to figure out a way to either get into space or to live, but it wasn't executed very well. I feel like the author focused way too much on the romance, and after googling the author I found out that he's a guy writing a female AI, and I don't know if that affects things, maybe. I don't want to be too judgmental, but I do find that when men write adult sci-fi about female main characters, it doesn't always turn out too well, so maybe that's the reason. It's just there was a lot of unnecessary romance, and I wanted Emily to focus on the human race rather than get distracted, because her whole point of being there, or her whole like reason for existence, was to look after the human race in one way or another. So I gave it 2.5 stars. It wasn't great, so I'm a bit disappointed by it. I then read Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. I gave this one 3 stars, and it will probably be the last Riley Sager book that I read, at least for a couple of years. This one is about a woman who's very poor. She takes a job in a very fancy apartment complex. She's basically hired to be an apartment sitter for the next few months, and she doesn't know why they need someone to sit in the apartment, and then someone goes missing, and it turns out that this is kind of a trend. So first of all, my issues with this one, why I gave it 3 stars, was it was very boring. It wasn't a very good thriller. Secondly, I didn't really like the main character. The whole like klutzy vibe that Riley Sager keeps going for is not cute, and it's just really freaking annoying at this point, especially because all of his female main characters sound the same, and I really wish he would just write a male main character for once, because maybe he's better at that. I just really don't like the way that he writes women, and I've said this in previous reviews of The Final Girls and The Last Time I Lied. I don't think he's very good at writing women at all, and it's really frustrating that all of his books seem to have unnecessary sex scenes. You don't need those in thrillers all the time, and I'm just not really a massive fan. So 3 stars. I'm probably not going to be exploring any of his work anytime soon unless he does something different. I read Heartstrings and Other Breakable Things, which I'm part of the blog tour for in December, and I gave this one 3 stars. It's YA contemporary. It's quite cute. The main character's parents are dead, and she was previously living in foster care until her rich auntie and uncle decide that they're happy to adopt her for the next few months until she goes off to college. There was a lot of rich people drama, which is what really drew me into the story, and I also really liked the romance, at least one of the romances. There's this really annoying love triangle which frustrated me because she chose the wrong person, and so I'm not going to talk about which guy I preferred or anything. It's just we spent a lot of time with this one guy and they built kind of a rapport and they got to know each other, they became best friends. She keeps going back to this other guy who she knew when she was like 6 or 7, hadn't spoken to him since, and suddenly they seem to have like tons of stuff in common. She keeps quoting like random classics to him and they're like, oh, we're made for each other, except he's got a girlfriend. But she keeps going back to that guy, and I really don't think she should have, because it was awful. So if I keep talking, I'm going to give away most of the plot. It's just I didn't like who she ended up with. I feel like she made the wrong decision. I'm very disappointed about that, and I also felt like she was very, very up herself. She would randomly quote, like I said, classics like Jane Eyre, Wuthering Heights. She'd just come out with these quotes that she apparently knows off by heart, and she would look down on people who wanted to dress nice, girls rather, who wanted to dress nice and have fun and go to parties and things, because she was so much better than them, because she played guitar and she could quote classic novels. And it was just really, I didn't like it. I was not a fan of that part. But saying that, I did really enjoy the friendships, and the YA contemporary like storyline was nice. It was nice. So I gave it 3 stars despite all of my ranting, and I promise I'm not just giving it 3 stars because I'm part of the blog tour. I would not have reviewed the book during the blog tour if I hated it. And finally, I listened to Astrophysics for People in a Hurry as an audiobook, and I gave that one 3 stars as well. I feel like it partly didn't work all that well as an audiobook because there were parts that I had to keep going back to and re-listen to, because the physics just kind of went over my head as I was driving. I think if I picked it up as a physical book, I would have been able to reread those passages and really get a grip on what the author was saying. But as an audiobook, the first part didn't really work because they were talking about electrons and neutrons, protons and stuff all in the beginning, and I feel like it was a bit too much. Later on in the book, when he started to get into the astro parts of astrophysics, it was really, really interesting and it really held my attention. It's just at the beginning it was kind of slow, and I think I started it like 2 or 3 times before I did like a full run of it. I did really enjoy it. I really enjoyed the like I said, the astro part of astrophysics. I really enjoyed learning about black holes and like Jupiter, Saturn, all these different things. But I just wish it had been easier to get into to begin with. That's my November wrap up. Thank you so much for watching. I will speak to you all in another video. Bye!